All right, hello and welcome everyone to another builds refresh, this time for Khora. Obviously, Khora is our resident beast tamer type character, and we just got some new melee mods and things, so it's unsurprising that she needs a builds refresh. Worth noting, today is going to be a much higher investment Khora than you even need to come close to doing. But also I'm going to go over a lot of lower end options for you to choose from if you don't just have all this nonsense that we're about to go over. So let's get started talking about what has changed with Khora. So first and foremost, obviously the pet changes we're going to go over in a moment, but we're going to talk about the shards that I have on her. So she has 4 purple shards right now. We're on 2 of the melee critical damage, so whenever your energy is over 500, it's quite a bit of crit. It's like 134% crit. Actually, it's higher than that. It's like 160% crit. It's an insane amount of crit if you have your energy max over 500, which of course we do. Just in these 2 shards, it is a huge amount of critical damage. So, that's great. Additionally, these 2 purple shards on the right side are 2 equilibrium shards, because we got to take equilibrium out of our build, and we could include just these here for that. Worth noting, you can include equilibrium in the build, and it is a little less comfortable, but you can make all of these shards even more melee critical damage if you really want to see the funniest numbers. In this case, I've chosen not to do that for the build to be much more comfy. And we also, of course, do have an open slot. I'm personally thinking that I'm just going to throw a parkour velocity mod in there. But you could do another equilibrium if you don't feel like the energy is quite good enough for your taste. Or you could do more damage if you feel like you don't want to be faster and you don't really need more energy. So there's a few different options for this. I've chosen just to leave it blank for the purposes of this video, but one of those 3 things is probably what's going to go in this slot. For the actual build itself, we have, for the subsume, chosen to go with Nourish. Obviously, for your Venari slot, it is a free subsume of whatever you want, because Venari is still around. You don't lose your cat if you subsume over that ability, so we just get Nourish. That means our energy economy is considerably better. Also, the damage increase from Nourish is applied to R1, because it's applied to our stat stick and then to R1. So we are getting more damage out of this as well. So it's quite good for that, for helping with the energy economy and just simply more damage. And adding viral is, of course, certainly not bad. Otherwise, this is a build that does shield gate, which is normally not something I go for. But Khora is kind of the exception to the rule of shield gating is very annoying, because her core gameplay loop of casting her 1 over and over will give you a lot of shield gating survivability just if you are doing the Khora thing. So doing Brief Respite plus 1 Augur mod is generally going to be very good just for some basic survivability. And then on top of that, we do have Rolling Guard, which is your get out of jail free card. If your shield breaks and you're in a weird position, or you run out of energy, or some nonsense happens, just roll. You got a million statuses on you, just roll, and everything will just be fine. There's very few problems that Khora can't deal with if she has 3 seconds of being totally invulnerable, including acolytes and a million other problems that can come up. So I found Rolling Guard to be very good. Of course, there is always the option of using catalyzing shields if you want to do way more shield gating shenanigans, to lower your shields down, and then of course get that large, or the larger full shield gate immunity duration. You can put that right where Rolling Guard is if that is more what you want to go for, and that's totally fine. Or for me personally, Rolling Guard takes care of pretty much any situation that's not already being totally survived by what I'm doing with Khora, which is killing everyone. Besides that, range-wise, we are on Stretch, Augur Reach, and Cunning Drift puts us at 190 range. Now, the ideal sweet spot for Khora is 200% range, as that is the cap limit on how far her Whip Claw's range will scale. But with the additional strength, it makes Nourish make our energy economy even better and also give us some more damage. And I've found that at 190 strength, this is totally fine. If you do want to go back to using Overextended and you don't mind losing that strength, which is still totally reasonable, you can put Overextended where Stretch is, and then Augur Reach becomes usually Augur Strength. Maybe sometimes it'll become the other augment mod we're going to talk about in a second. Or, if you want Duration, if you want Streamline, whatever you feel like the build needs, you can get all of the range that you want just from these 2 mods. And you don't really need to run this 30%, because 205 is plenty for Khora. So you can choose to do that. For me personally, I'm on Stretch, Augur, and Cunning. And you can, adjust to your specific taste, but I think this has worked out best for me. Also, we're on Energy Nexus. As I mentioned, Equilibrium does normally go in this build. Energy Nexus combined with Nourish is extremely comfortable, especially for missions that do not spawn nearly as many enemies, as it is just a very good constant energy rate that you're going to be getting at all times, which can sustain you on missions where there's just fewer dudes. So if you want to play Khora in more situations where you're not at like 100 plus KPM, which is, turns out, a lot of missions, that's going to be really good for her sustainability long term in those missions. In terms of other stuff here, I mean, Umbral Intensify is a very good strength mod. Obviously, we need our strength in a bunch of places and definitely not really R4, so Umbral Intensify is kind of the go-to. Prime Flow is, of course, to turn on those purple shards, and then Prime Continuity is for just a good bit more duration so that, R3 lasts longer and, so on and so forth. R4 lasts longer, just convenience, really, but duration does just generally help her out with things. Other than that, augment-wise, we are on Molt Augmented, so we go up to 200% and a little change. Strength, once that is fully maxed out, which is quite a good amount. And then Arcane Fury, which is on crits. This is going to give us 180% melee damage to melee weapons for 18 seconds, which is, of course, going to affect our whip and give us a ton of damage. So this is just generally survivable, turns on the purple shards for vastly more damage, very comfortable on the energy economy with Energy Nexus plus Nourish. And I want to talk about a couple of other options that you can do for your subsume. So obviously there's, going for like the big damage options, or like going for like pillage or something, which is like an armor strip plus survivability through shields and things like that. But the other actually very notable subsume is Varuna's, actually, because her 1 will give you orbs through Varuna's skill. So it is more energy when you're killing, but less damage, and less energy when there's not enemies. No energy when there's not enough enemies, really. So I personally am not as much of a fan of that, as I think it does worse in the situations where you're just playing Khora and not like in a survival and constantly killing everyone that exists, which this build also does well. But Varuna's is a lot more for you do need to be killing all the time, and this build just doesn't really need to do that. But Varuna's 3 is also a good option for putting over her 3 if you want a better energy economy that way. So that's all well and good, and is good stuff. Now, we do, of course, need to talk about the stat stick. In this case, I am using the Magistar. The Magistar is the technically optimal stat stick. However, you'll be happy to know you really need no specific stat stick at all. The reason the Magistar is the best, and specifically the regular Magistar, not the Sancti, is just because of this node. This gives you base critical chance 16%, and then base critical damage multiplier 1x. Which is a huge increase to your base stats. There's nowhere else that you can get this critical damage base multiplier increase. It is a phenomenally large increase in damage. That being said, I've done a bunch of testing without this, and it's like absolutely totally fine. You do not need this in any way, shape, or form. And the ceramic dagger build that I showed, well, the same exact build I'm going to show on the ceramic dagger will work exactly the same way, and that weapon's better about building combo and keeping combo, so you don't need to run Naramon for that. So if you don't have Naramon, or if you'd rather run Zenrik, because the energy economy certainly helps on Khora, you can still do that just fine, and it's really not going to change your performance meaningfully, but the Magistar is technically better. For that, this is the build. This is the build I'd run on basically everything. There is one little twinge of difference, though. So obviously, you'll note that the Gladiator Rush is only rank 4, which hardly matters. It's 1 additional second of combo duration and no other changes. So this is just fine as it is. This will just do it with Khora, and then you can run whatever primary and secondary you want. If you are in a situation where one of your primaries or secondaries has Gladiator Dexterity, has the Dexterity Arcane on it, you can instead go for the other Gladiator mod, which is Gladiator Might, for more critical damage. So that will be, more damage because you won't need the combo duration if you have a Dex mod, or a Dex Arcane, rather, on your primary or secondary, because you're getting your combo duration somewhere else. You can also just not change it, and the damage that she does is hilariously high anyway. But this is the stat stick build that I would use on basically anything. Worth noting, if it is not an Incarnate weapon, you do not need Discipline's Merit. You can totally skip this, because the only thing we're using this for is slapping enemies 4 times with the weapon, so that we get a free evolve that doesn't need all our combo. And then we get, of course, the addition of the 100% melee damage from the Incarnate form, which is quite nice, without having to spend all of our combo on it. Other things, obviously, Venari and Venari's claws are kind of getting a new coat of paint and are very impressive now. So the build on Venari is this. This should make a lot of sense. The core things here are Prime Pack Leader. Well, even just regular Pack Leader will be more than enough. Tenacious Bond, a little bit of survivability, and then from there, everything is just nice to haves. Synth Deconstruct is just any enemy that Venari interacts with has a chance to drop health orbs, and because we're on equilibrium, those are energy. Tandem Bond will make it so any enemy that Venari hits is going to give us combo, which just makes it way easier to build to max combo. Primed Animal Instinct is just nice to have. Fear Sense is a thing that, like, seems like it's been fine. You could also put an armor mod here if you want Venari to be even more survivable. Fetch is for just all the scenarios where we don't have our other companion. So if you're taking her into, like, the Index, for example, you'll still be able to get the Fetch effect because she has Venari. And then Contagious Bond is only a factor if you are building out her claws completely, which, of course, is new and expensive because there's a lot of rank 10 mods in here. There's 4 rank 10 mods in here, but it's only one Forma, so there's that. And the only thing that's core here is Bite to turn on Tenacious Bond, and otherwise, you don't need any other mods. Like this, if you only have Bite in here, this should be Elusive Posture, just so that Venari stays alive more often. But with Frenzied Posture or Balanced Posture, which I also tried quite a bit, this can actually kill large groups of enemies with mild support from you or your Sentinel. And the Sentinel, speaking of which, in this case, is Death Cube. Death Cube is doing pretty normal Death Cube things. Obviously, we're getting Tenacious Bond from our companion. No, you cannot stack it, though it does appear twice. This is basically giving us another, Synth Deconstruct and Energy Generator, so even more Energy Orb generation, more Health Orb generation, just making it very, very consistent for energy economy to be maxed out, essentially. And then, of course, the Tazacore, which is the new addition to the arsenal that is going to freeze enemies solid in a large radius around us. With Death Cube and Venari doing their thing, I do want to show what they do without Khora's help, as it's pretty important. So I'm going to unpause the AI. Khora is invincible, but the companions are not. And this is a level 225 Steel Path test. So they get frozen solid. And then Venari is going to kill them all now. So the companions are pretty good. The combination of total lockdown of enemies in an area and Venari just being able to fucking kill them all is pretty solid. And that is not the main focal point of this build at all, because you're Khora. The thing I did not mention on Khora also, for the looting build, at lower levels, you just do this. At higher levels where you still need accumulating, just like turn this into overextended and replace Augur Reach with the Pilfering Strangledown, if you are going for that. Or you can replace Energy Nexus. Really, it's to taste. Those are the mods that kind of get swapped around, as I mentioned before. But if you're looting, that's probably what you should do. But yeah, so that's what's going on there. Otherwise, we're just building up combo on the Magistar, and, like, it's pretty, we don't have a lot that needs to happen here. The enemies can't really do a lot to this. Like, even before we're built up on combo, we're doing, like, very significant damage to these enemies. Like, we're only at 3x combo, and you saw me hit for 500,000. The numbers get very, very stupid, very, very fast. And Naramon, as you can see in the bottom corner, is making us only lose 5 of our combo if we let the timer go down. So interims between the different groups of enemies really don't matter very much. We'll lose very little combo that we can usually get back in one swing of our one. So yeah, that's what's going on with Khora. She is a turbo murderer, and it's much better now that Venari is actually exceedingly useful companion, arguably the best companion in the game in terms of damage output, I would say. Unfortunate that Venari is stuck on Khora, though it's very good news for Khora. So let's jump into Steel Path and just absolutely do stupid numbers to enemies, just like Baruch did. But yeah, Khora is incredible. Who'd have thought that Venari would be like one of the primary glow-ups of the companion rework, right? That wasn't even a necessary one. Khora was already great. Wasn't on my bingo card. I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, whenever the companion, 2 changes were coming around, I was like, not even considering that Venari could become cracked. But it's good. Hey, Khora is appreciative. Put our 4s down in a couple locations here. Toss our 3 on. Oh, here, I'll switch to this. I should keep the Sinoid Gamma Core out. It's worth noting that it, like, generates some energy with me if I'm, like, holding it. But just so you guys can see the combo multiplier, I'll have that out here. Shroom is also, like, not the best for Khora. But it also doesn't matter a whole lot. Since we're not in the era where Khora's 1 was, like, hit detection nightmare mode. And we're at the point where we can evolve this thing. We might as well just use these enemies for that. A Death Cube giving us that solid protection. Yeah, get this evolved now. Yeah, you'll note Death Cube, like, just freezing the enemies solid is just incredible CC. The new, like, Tazakor setup is just fantastic. Oh, here's a solid tile. Yeah, just fill your screen with red. Just a few damage numbers as a treat. Yeah, the number's not quite as, like, dummy invested as Baruch as you do have to, you know. I think it's more valuable to replace Equilibrium than just go for, like, the dumbest numbers imaginable, but feel free to do so. But it turns out 5 million direct damage is often more than enough to make the enemies regret being born. They tend to not like it. And the numbers can sometimes, especially depending on what content you're doing, or if your team is giving you any buffs, like, you know, you'll see, like, the big, like, 30 millions and stuff pop off of enemies. Even, like, a 4-man group scaling for the Acolyte, you'll often hit them twice. So, yeah, it's pretty good. As you can see, our 4 lasts a pretty decent amount of time. That's that continuity, just niceness for just, like, good area control. And this build can pretty much just do what it wants. It's worth noting that, like, this, like, 2-net setup, if you are using her augment, you do want to make sure and prioritize enemies that are in your net as what you're killing. There's 16 million, very nice. As what you're hitting. Because if you don't do that, if you just kill anybody who's not in your net, you won't get more loot. So usually you put your net at a choke point. Your net does grab enemies through walls, thankfully. So it's actually just, like, usually an AoE increase for what you're up to. But yeah, that's, like, you know, you put it at a choke point, it grabs all the enemies, and then, you know, it mirrors the damage to all the enemies and just obliterates them all, which is pretty good. Wow, very early Acolyte here. Oh, it's Violence. That is, of course, the most problematic Acolyte for Khora. I bet he's dead. Turns out Khora's a little problematic for him, too. Just if, you know, she's around. I guess problematic maybe was a bit too strong of a word for what Violence is for Khora. It's more of a who acts first situation. Not even pressed 2 yet. Oh, yeah, the giant damage increase you get from your 2 is just absolutely unnecessary. Like, you can do it, and it's funny. But, like, otherwise, like, you know, that's for, like, Demolus on Steel Path only. Yeah, Violence failed the QuickTime event to stop me from murdering him. Re-evolve our weapon here. Throw the Nourish back on. Your energy economy is just phenomenal. In 5 minutes, we'll, like, check what our KPM is so far. 9 million damage to that Xmas. You fool. Oops, wrong button. 5 minutes. We're at 645 kills. And I would say that this tile is, like, decent for Khora. The interesting thing about Khora, or one of the interesting things about Khora, is that because of the way her 4 works, where it will snag enemies through walls, you can kind of make any tile work, but her best tiles are actually the really, like, dense hallways where it's difficult for her to, like, be gotten to by enemies, so that they just run through hallways, get caught in her 4, and then she shoots her 1 into a hallway and kills everybody. Because it causes the enemies to just constantly run at you instead of, like, trying to stop and shoot you when they see you briefly, which is what's happening in, like, these middle hallways here. You can see the energy economy is just stellar here with absolutely no problems whatsoever. Which is, you know, as I said, this energy economy is supposed to work even if you are just running around, like, throwing your whip claw at singular enemies. That's the point. Because, you know, if the build's not capable of doing a variety of content, if it's only for survival, it's not particularly useful. Whereas this build should be able to take on significantly more content with little to no issues. Like, the big thing you're going to run into is that enemies that have attenuation, they take a specific amount of time to kill. And Khora's, you know, one of her primary ways of living is, oh, enemies around me are dead. So whenever an enemy just has 60 seconds on the clock and you're stuck in the ring with them, you know, not Khora's favorite. Attenuation is something Khora would like to do without, but unfortunately has to deal with in those situations. Kill these guys. Enemies are stuck down here. Kill these guys. Ooh, 21 million. Nice one. Nice one, nice one. Wow, another fast Acolyte. Just some, like, minimum time Acolytes we got here. Oh, my Incarnate just fell off, so I'm sure this will take longer, right, guys? Oh, he barely survived. Oh. Impressive. Oh, my. Also, Nourish was down. Not as impressive. I didn't even have Nourish back up or my Incarnate evolved. It's fine. Hey, you there. Stop being invincible. Oh, you died. You died too fast. Okay, I gotta hit 3 other people. There we go. Evolve the Incarnates. We can get that good, juicy number. Just toss an 8 million damage down hallways. You know. Normal Khora stuff. Yeah, I mean, like, hey, I know I recently, I had to notably, I had to, like, reevaluate for a minute after doing the Baruch video, which was like, man, these Khora numbers are lower. They're not meaningfully lower than what Baruch is doing. Also, Khora has an easier time applying it to a larger range, and she also has no, like, other meter to contend with, which is arguably, like, you know, harder to maintain than energy in some cases. So there's a plus minus, and the damage is still just truly outrageous. Yeah, Baruch is on stupid number. Khora is on vastly enough number for any content you're like to actually go and do ever. He is more than plenty. We're already almost at 10 minutes. Man, this flew by. This flew by. We're already almost at 10 minutes. There we go. And that's 12:58. Yeah, we had a run before in one of those like more like optimal tiles for her that was about a 1400, which is like 140 kpm. But yeah, really good stuff. I mean, Khora's great. Khora's great. We didn't even use our 2 here. Like, if you see someone that really needs to die, toss your 2 on them and hit your 1, and if they still exist, there's a bigger problem. But yeah, it is... Khora's great. That's like pre-nerf for Runa. Yeah, Khora's very good. She's a little more frail. A little more frail than a lot of other Warframes, but not by a huge amount. And she is... You know, she's a loot frame that can give you double loot on a lot of instances. That is just excellent and does a colossal amount of damage, and she can do it all herself. So, yeah, just absolutely phenomenal. Just absolutely great. Yeah, that's gonna do it for Khora video. Thanks. So hopefully this was enlightening. Also, a companion video is going to happen. This timer continues. I'm planning to do it after the timer, but the timer continues. All right, we're back from TennoCon, and the streamathon is going to continue. But there will, of course, I will try and have there be videos as well as the streamathon at the same time if I can. Also, thank you to the $10 patrons: Athean, Alex Parnham, Arbiter Daydream, Benuven, Brutus Salazar, Canalatra, Club 3, Dylan Dworsky, Athrain, Afan, James Hearthstone, JC4 Science, Josh, Luzanth, Malik X Williams, Mark Smith, Mikakel, Minty Ginja, Mitchta, Nerve, Ruby, Sanyu, Skur, Sharp247, Tamrielic Wastelander, Tester ZWP, The Coupon of Death, Tomeworm, Victor Palmer, Waifu Wars, Waudata1, and Sarah Fear. And of course, all of my other patrons as well. It is incredibly appreciated for all of your support. But yeah, we're gonna try and keep the videos a little bit more regular while the streamathon continues. And of course, we do have a free-to-play through coming soon.